I'll call this meeting to order. First item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes for the last meeting of 6/13/24. I assume everybody's received a copy of the minutes, thanks to Derek.
Yes.
What's your pleasure?
I make a motion to accept.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. For a second item on the agenda is comments from Steve Mednick.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
Pleasure. So the agenda says I'm going to talk about types of public notice needed and planning and zoning issues under Title VIII. And what I did is I sent out to the chair, and I think he sent out to everybody, a pretty lengthy document that where I wanted to get into one sheaf of papers all of the notice requirements that are in Title VIII, which is the zoning statutes in Connecticut. I also put in all of the provisions of the zoning code from Stonington that deal with public hearings, the zoning regulations that deal with public hearings and notice, so that we all had in one place all the notices that you need to be mindful of for the planning and zoning process. And I think the way to address all of those is, and that's why I put up front, is to have definitions in your charter. And it goes broader than that. I figured let's move this along and let's give you some ideas that you can begin to digest. You don't have to approve them tonight, but we could think about them during the course of the day. And what I did do is I ran every one of these definitions against your charter to make sure that the words are used in the charter. I didn't want to come up with something, a word that was used in another charter that isn't used in Stonington. And so if you look at the definitions, I don't know why I kept resolution highlighted. That's because I wasn't sure whether you had. Yeah, and I kept the old language in here. I didn't fix it. But we have in this definition, if you take a look at item 10, 11, and 13 and 14, we have definitions, and these we can work on. I've used these similar definitions in other places. I modify them from town to town, city to city, to make sure they work for your community. And we come up with what a meeting notice is, or a hearing notice, and how that works. And I can still see I have Board of Aldermen on here. I'm sorry, I didn't change everything. I was trying to get this done. And I also have what a public hearing is, and how public notice or notice works. And what I try to do is, in the trend in most communities is that where your charters had firm newspaper notice provisions. That was from a time where newspapers were one of the principal ways that you got information out to the public, and it still may be. And what I do is have it in a definition to say what the notice is. How do you post? You post by filing your agenda with the town clerk. The town clerk posts it on the website, posts it on a wall in the town clerk's office, presumably, or somewhere like that. You may have a provision that should be in the library or something like that, places where people go. In one of my charters, we actually say that the town clerk could decide that there are bodegas, convenience stores, butcher shops, or whatever there may be in town where people go. And some of the smaller towns have places that are not government buildings where people go. The grocery store, if there's a small town with just a grocery store. I don't mandate that they do that, but the concept is the town clerk should have that ability to make those kinds of decisions. And if necessary, and the town clerk makes a judgment, or the chair of a commission says to the town clerk, I really think this should go into the newspaper, you can go in the newspaper, but you don't have to go in the newspaper. So if the concept is useful to you as we go through the charter and we see what the notice provisions look like, you can decide whether or not newspaper notice is something that's required. What we can't do is we can't we can't eliminate the statutory requirements. So if there's a statutory newspaper publication requirement for zoning, then the definition takes into account that you need to comply with the statute. So our charter can't override the statute would override the charter. And so I think that if we have a definition of notice, and I ask you to look at it, don't have to act on it tonight, and you'll have all these other definitions you could look at as well. Then I think having a good, robust definition that is tailored to you, and I would have the town clerk take a look at this as well, because the town clerk is the person who is going to be administering this and dealing with this, that I think you have a much better approach. And as we deal with the charter, we can simply use the word notice, or public hearing, and you don't have to define it every time you go through and use it. You may define the number of days notice would be different for one thing than another. And we're not going to change, we can't change the zoning regulations through charter revision. But the zoning regulations, once you do this, they may want to take a look at the zoning regs and fix it, because you now have a town-wide definition of notice, so they don't have to be that specific if they want to do that at some point down the line. Make the document align with what you're trying to do in the charter. And the same thing would be true of the ordinances. As ordinances are passed, you shouldn't have to define what notice is in the ordinance. Say notice is set forth in the charter.
But the charter would take precedent over the zoning regs.
It takes precedence over, everything has to comply with the charter, except to the extent where the charter, where Title VIII has a mandate. If Title VIII under Connecticut's state law says you need to have newspaper notice, then the charter recognizes that. The language I'm giving you will recognize that the ascendancy of the state law. So that's the concept. And so I don't think you should take action on it tonight, but I wanted to at least lay out the concept. You can look at these things, talk to people, planning and zoning. I don't know what the commissioner had in mind, specifically for planning and zoning. But we're not going to change the zoning regs through charter revision.
Right.
That's the point I want to make, is that that's not something we can do. We will influence the zoning regs, and the zoning regs should ultimately comply. Now, if the zoning regs want to stay the way they are, if there's a bunch of newspaper notices in the zoning regs that are not required by the state, they want to do that, they can do that. Because, it's a legal framework, and if the town in that framework wants to keep newspaper notice, this doesn't stop it. It simply says you don't have to do it. So that's the concept.
Thank you for your input. Any questions on this topic before I move to the next?
No.
Okay.
Well,
so-
do you want me to, while I have the floor, can I just talk about the other thing, the issue that you raised last week about the Board of Selectmen and what we want to call the Board of Selectmen?
Okay, sure, absolutely.
All right, and then you want to start going through the,
Yeah, the template that I
template.
passed out.
yeah. So what I have found is this, and I've not completed the project. I had CCM print out for me all the selectmen towns. And let me just see something here. I've started going through it. I know that Lyme calls, yeah, it's still here listed as selectmen. Lyme calls their Board of Selectmen the Board of Select Persons now. And they call their first selectman, if he's a male, the first selectman, and they call their first select woman, if she's a woman, first select woman. So that's the way they deal with getting away from a locked-in gender in the positions. They call it the Board of Select Persons. What I decided to take a look at is to take a look at Massachusetts. Massachusetts, a number of years ago, changed by statute. They changed their boards of selectmen to be select boards. I think I mentioned this briefly at the last meeting. So I wanted to look at and see how that worked. And so what they do is the following. If you have a select board, the leader of the select board is not the first select whatever. The leader is the chair of the select board. And that's how that is dealt with. The vice chair of the select board, the secretary of the select board. And that is the way those members are identified there. What they don't have in Massachusetts is they don't have first selectmen. They have a mandate. It's very interesting. They have a cutoff. If you're under a certain population, the forms of government are A, B, and C. But all the forms of government require a professional manager, whether it's a town manager or town administrator. So there's no such thing at the local level, the smaller town level, of having the chair of the board of the select board be the chief executive officer. In Connecticut, it's different. In Connecticut requires a chief executive, which can be an elected official, like the first selectman, a select woman or selectman, or it could be the city manager, town manager. And so that the select board, the board of selectmen would be a board of directors in effect. And they hire the city manager, the town manager, and that manager is the chief executive official. And that's permitted to have a non-elected chief executive official in Connecticut. Massachusetts, they don't have it, so what I would say is that if you keep the form of government, I don't think there's any debate about the form of government, and you were to go and change the name, which I'm not advocating, I was asked the question, then what I would say is that in our definitions, where we define first selectman, and I've kept the current titles in my proposed definitions in the Board of Selectmen, is if we go with select board, I would say select board means the elected body which shall have all the powers, duties, and responsibilities conferred upon boards of selectmen under the Connecticut General Statutes. So then you'll use the word Board of Selectmen once to refer to the legal requirement to have an entity of that nature, and that would be the way it would be dealt with in your charter. Then thereafter you would say,
She is.
okay,
Sorry, I got a ticket.
oops,
Delayed me.
oops. And thereafter you would call it select board throughout the document. Likewise, instead of the first selectman, we would have the chair, the select board chair, if you were to go with that terminology. We would say instead of the first selectman, we'd say the select board chair is the chief executive officer of the town, known under the general statutes as the first selectman. And then you would use, select board chair throughout the document. So we satisfy the statutory requirements because they've not changed those terms. I don't think there'd be a problem if we ignored it, but I just think belt and suspenders is not a bad thing.
So, when we make our recommendations to the to the select board, do we just make the recommendations that it be gender neutral, or do we actually draft the new charter?
We'll draft the new charter.
Okay,
Yeah,
so
that's our job, yeah.
we've made a determination at our last meeting that we would like to have the charter be gender neutral. When we go through the drafting process, then we can decide on that, based on our thoughts and your.
Yeah, I mean, and the sooner you do it, I'll start drafting already. I've already done gender neutrality. There was only one, so they must have done it in the last charter because
Okay.
there was not much to do on gender neutrality, frankly. So if and when you make a decision about that, let's do it earlier. Let's not wait on all these decisions till the end of the process. So that because what I'll be doing is as you're making changes, I will give you the changes at the meeting after you do it, so you can actually see what the changes look like in the body of the document.
Very good. So, then let's talk about that right now. What's your pleasure? What's your thoughts? I mean, I wouldn't mind calling the select people, the select board, but I'm open to discussion. Whatever you think.
I mean, I wouldn't have a problem with that either. I'm just afraid with select man and select woman, is that really gender neutral? I mean, are there going to be another category that comes up at some point in life? Not that it may happen, but is that gender? I mean, you're still specific to man and woman, and now we seem to have other categories, but.
What I've recommended is pronoun freedom, freedom from pronouns. And what I say is that we'll use those terms once in the charter. We'll use the Board of Selectmen once if you were to define it as select board, and that's the term you'd use throughout the charter, but in the definitions you would say serving the functions of a Board of Selectmen because that's the term that's in the statutes. All right, when you get to issue of the first selectman or woman, we won't use that term, except once. We will say the chair, the select board chair, however whatever syntax we use, would be the term. So instead of first selectman or first select woman, we would say select board chair, chair of the select board,
Right.
however we want to do it. So you would not have, what I've tried to do with gender neutrality, I didn't have to do it here because the charter's pretty good about that. I just did it in Waterbury. You will not see any pronouns, they're gone. And so I've restructured everything so that it says what we want to have said, but it leaves out the pronouns, so we don't have that debate. Because the pronoun debate can go on in different directions for the next 20 years. I think we're better off without the pronouns.
Yeah, I'm fine with select board then.
But what are we calling the first selectman?
Chair,
The chair, select board chair, select the chair of the select board, that would be the first,
I see you grimacing, I don't.
I don't like
agree-
it.
I agree with
I
you.
don't like it.
you can call it first selectman. I mean, you can call
Right,
it
but why
whatever.
can't we say choose your own pronoun? Just label them first selectman, board of selectmen, and, whoever's elected can choose how they want to be referred to. What if they were they? I mean,
Well,
The
the
chair of the
existing-
selectmen
And the
is-
existing charter states that usage, that man is interchangeable for woman and every other
Yeah,
pronoun.
and you can do that, yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
but some people don't identify it
No,
that way.
I get that.
Right.
but chair of the select, no one's gonna call it that anyway. I mean, it's
They may just
cumbersome and
call
onerous,
chair of the board.
but they're not gonna do that. I mean,
No,
it's,
the other situation is we have second and third selectmen. How do we define them if the leader of the board is the chair? Because we don't have a vice chair or a second vice president.
Well, you'd have to do vice chair, you'd
Yeah.
have to do secretary or clerk or second vice chair or whatever you want to.
But then we come up, okay, how do we determine who the vice chair is? Is it based upon votes gotten in the election?
How's it
Whoever has
determined now?
It's not.
we don't have that. That's
Oh.
why chair is a weird terminology. Can't we call them select person?
You can do that.
I like that better
Yeah.
than chair of the this and the that and the.
Yeah,
You know.
I think
And
we
do
should, I
for-
think we should
first
take a
select-
position and move on, because I didn't think it would garner this much discussion,
Has this
quite
been all that's
frankly.
done so far?
But I
No, I
agree
went
with
through
you.
the notice
No,
stuff.
I went through the notice, which I'm glad you came in on, and I want you to, if you have any questions, I want you to.
Well, I read
ask.
all that, and I assume those were just the statutes, right?
Yeah,
Statutes and the zoning regs.
Yeah, but they're not going in the charter, they were just.
No, I gave them to you because
illustration.
because you wanted to look at zoning. I wanted you to see where all the notice provisions were,
Yeah,
both in the statutes and in the zoning regs.
so anything else, we can't really add to them.
Can't really change them,
Yeah.
but you can define the terms in the charter, and you can't change the state statute with your
Right.
charter, but the zoning board would have to
Adopt.
comply with your definitions.
Yeah, and the other issue is how do we make notice something that gets out to the most amount of people? Not everybody gets the newspaper anymore, so,
Everyone gets mail,
I'm sorry?
everyone gets mail,
Every-
they manage to pay their tax bills, so I'm sure they're getting it, but, yeah.
Yeah, and on the gender neutrality in the title, you will be the first in the state to make that kind of change.
Really?
Lyme has done it, I said a moment ago, the Board of Select Persons, they call it, is what they call the board there. But, as I said, before our good friend came into the meeting, they call their first selectman a first selectman if he's a man, and a select woman if he's a woman, she's a woman. I don't know where you go with other people, other pronouns, and how you would modify that, but,
Person would be.
yeah. And that's why Massachusetts has gotten away from all the pronouns. That's where the concepts came from that I was talking about today.
Do we have to make a motion on the select person? Do
We
do that?
we don't have to, I think we just give them
Give them
guidance as what
direction.
we prefer. I kind of like select board, and then first select person, and second select person. And if they want to change it themselves to select man or select woman, God bless them. It recognizes that whoever gets elected could be of whatever gender they are. There you go.
Right.
Okay. Lynn, anything else before I move on to the, our deliberations?
That's it. I have not resolved the issue of the timing for the referendum. I I was gonna talk to the town clerk about that, I was jammed, I had a commercial
That's fine.
closing to get done, they got
Still-
done today.
But we have plenty of time to do that, I think.
We do.
But go ahead.
I do have a question for you, because somebody who was here tonight brought it up to me about whether or not, despite the 15% hurdle, whether or not, based on the notice requirements and whatnot for the Board of Finance that are in the existing charter, we could in fact add charter change to that budget referendum.
It wouldn't be added to the referendum, you'd have two simultaneous
Oh, so we would just,
referenda.
okay, so we just deal with it on
So
one vote
there's
then.
gonna be the need for coordination.
Yeah.
And what I did find is that there is no locked fixed date for the referendum.
No, there isn't.
So as we're going through this process,
We'd have to
we
coordinate
should be
with-
coordinating with them
Right,
so that we both set the same date.
yeah. I am one of
And
them,
that would be,
so-
that'd be up to the Board of Selectmen, or Select Board, whatever we're gonna call it. It would be up to the Board of Selectmen, they're the ones who make that decision about the date. So I think it's
Sort of,
some,
we have to send so I'm on the Board of Finance and the other person who raised the point is behind me on the Board of Finance. We kind of control that process as to when we get done, then it goes.
no, I get that, but they're gonna have to coordinate with the
Yeah,
Board of
no,
Selectmen
okay,
because
yeah.
the Selectmen
Yeah.
make the choice on
Of- of the-
referendum for the charter.
Right.
So we should probably chat with the.
But so I had a conversation with the first select person, and about whether or not, you know, even if we could miraculously finish this in time, whether the Board of Selectmen has an interest in doing this by this November's election, and the answer to that was yes, which was a sort of a surprise to me. So, you know.
And was she willing to say that the rest of it they don't care about, or that they would appoint a new commission to deal with the rest
No,
of it?
no, they're talking, well, that, they didn't really want to, we didn't have that conversation, but she was hoping we could have all of it ready for this November. And I said, I don't know that that's
We're
humanly
running out of
possible.
time. I mean, I think
know.
you're running out of time.
I mean, we could probably get through our stuff, but
We can,
then there's you. So I just wanted to point out though, that, you know, that appetite is there. Surprisingly.
so when this commission was created, they gave us a 4 or 5 questions, which we've dealt with already. Also, they gave us a red line charter, which we were concerned about going through that tonight because there were some changes in there. I had some trouble going through it, and I asked our Director of Human Resources to help me with that, and she gave me this nice little template.
Yep.
Which, we've gone through a lot of them already, and if you have looked, I mean, I circulated it, if you're ready to go through it, I'm ready to go
I've
through
read
it.
it, and I
Yeah,
know what I think, so.
yeah, so let's do that.
Do
Let's
you have
go.
an extra copy of the template?
Sure do. You didn't print that out either? I sent it to you, here,
And I didn't print it out.
take it,
Thank you.
here you go,
Oh, you have your holes in there. Take that back.
that's it.
Okay, fine. It took me a long time to put the whole
No, I
thing.
know that, I
Do you
wouldn't.
have your dates on it too?
So if you're all willing to start with that, I'd like to do that right now. So, item 0 has already been decided. Item 1, vote, which, and you can go, I don't know if you have the red line charter, you might wanna follow along with the red line charter. So that's on, page 2 of the red line charter, and it talks about voting districts. And the point that was raised is that the registrar of voters will determine the number of voting districts, which is inconsistent with the state statute. And so we have to substitute, we have to substitute the word legislative body for registrar of voters. And that would be consistent with the state statute. Do you follow me, or?
Yeah, I follow you. Does anyone happen to know, maybe you would know, would we actually still have 5 voting districts if?
This is the first time hearing about
Okay.
anything about the
Yeah,
registrar of voters.
and so, the making of the voting districts is basically governed by state statute. And the state statute says that it's the legislative body in the town that determines the number of voting districts. You look at the state statute to see, and I don't know exactly what it says, but you look at the state statute to see how you go about configuring the voting districts. And when you do that, then the legislative body in the town, which happens to be
Town
the
meeting.
town
Town
meeting,
meeting.
then it goes before the town meeting. So really, the change that was suggested is basically to bring it in conformity with the state statutes. And I guess my question is, do we have to vote on that, or do we just do it because the charter has to be brought into conformity with state statute?
You would vote on it as one of your recommendations
Then
for
I have to-
change.
Yeah, but who brings the proposal? The selectmen, who originally brought the proposal to change the
So
districts?
my
The select people
yeah.
in the town did.
The
Yeah.
select people, so.
The select people in town, and it was also sent to the various boards, and they gave their input. So when we asked for people to come from the various boards, to our last meeting, and no one showed up, they actually did have some input, and this was circulated by Danielle, and she got these recommendations. So that is one of the recommendations that was made, and it's a point well taken. So I would,
I'm looking at
Go ahead.
the wording that they have in here,
yes,
where they say the registrars of voters will determine the number of voting districts needed, which is then passed by the town meeting.
yes.
Rather than the word determine, I would say recommend.
Recommend.
Um,
That makes sense.
then there you go. That's fine. I'd entertain a motion on it.
But who did they recommend? Do they first recommend it to the selectmen and then to a town meeting? Who brings it to a town meeting? It's the Board of Selectmen, correct? The registrar of voters don't have authority to bring it to a
No.
town
They
meeting.
do not.
So the way that's worded doesn't make sense.
So it would be a special town meeting, have it go to the Board of Selectmen, they would then notice the special town meeting for this purpose, something like that,
And that's if there's a change.
if there's a change.
Yeah.
Right.
So,
So I would say instead of the town meeting, I'd say the special town meeting, which implies that it runs through the
Select
select
persons.
board.
So it's not, so as it reads, the only thing that is incorrect about this is the registrar of voters determining the number of voting
We'll
districts.
recommend.
So recommend, sounds like a great suggestion.
And you're taking the 5 out,
Yes.
I would also say may rather than will or shall, mandatory, because it's not really a mandatory. And how many registered
it's a-
voters do you have? 2?
I mean, registrars, yes, too.
So what if they don't agree? I mean, it's really, you have 2 people making a decision, you have to agree.
yeah, but it's based on a
But it's
legislative
based on state
Right.
statute,
formula.
Right, so it's,
so it's not like they have a choice of whether they want to recommend a change or not.
So if they recommend a change, even though they recommend it, doesn't mean that it shall be or may be voted on.
right,
But in order to change it, it has to be voted on.
yeah, it has
So-
to go to the
yeah.
elector voters, right?
And so the way the process would work was if the select board made a recommendation, it would have to be a special town meeting.
But shouldn't it read that they'll make the recommendation to the Board of Selectmen?
It's fine, it's
I
fine
mean,
by
I don't know
me.
what the process, whatever the legal wording is, you
I
would be
don't know that
doing
it
the
makes
legal
a-
wording, you
yeah.
can work on that.
yeah, I could do that.
Okay.
I would also think about the board, the registrar of voters are required to recommend from time to time, because they don't have to do it every year, but they can do it when they think it needs to be done. But the word will is a very weak word.
Why?
Are required.
Shall or
Shall
may
as a
or will.
requirement.
Shall's a dangerous word.
Hmm.
When I was in law school, shall was
It's
mandatory, but there's now courts that have indicated not. So I've been trying to move charters to required to, must do it, that kind of thing, so that it becomes pretty apparent. Required is a pretty good way to do it. But you're giving them discretion, as you're saying, from time to time. They don't have to do it every day of the week or every year. They do it when they think it needs to be done, is what it goes down. And it has to be done by ordinance, and I would bring it to the Board of Selectmen to go to a special town meeting.
So then could you make that first line, the registrars of voters will recommend the number of voting districts as needed? Would that work?
It would work. when necessary, when.
The registrar of voters may from time to time recommend the number of voting districts needed to the select board.
So I'm making that select board change, okay?
I'm sorry?
Is anyone okay with that?
But the registrars have things they have to do, you know, by their own requirements, so there's no reason to identify everybody's job description in here, so I assume that that's one of the things they have to do as population changes and things happen. So we don't care, if we care.
Actually, you know, when you read it and it says shall only be changed by ordinance, then guess what? It's compliant with the statute. We don't have to make the change.
Right.
Then let's move on. All right, next one.
While we're on that page, can I just, at the top of
Please.
page 6 there,
Yep,
the fourth line down,
page 6.
it says the enumeration of particular powers in this and any other chapter of this chapter. Shouldn't that the second chapter actually be charter?
I'm sorry, where are you?
Yes.
Top of page 6.
Yeah, but they're different, they may be different pages.
Okay,
What's
sorry,
the-
Yeah, you're
just
right.
above elections, where
Okay.
it says chapter 2 elections.
Okay, wow,
There's a lot of those little
okay,
things.
yeah,
Yeah, it's of this charter.
okay. So, again, it goes back to my question, do we, if we're just making, if we're making, not substantive changes, but formal changes, do we have to vote on that?
You'll vote on the whole thing at the end.
Yeah.
So if, a little change like
We
that,
ask that you,
if you wanna do a motion, you can do a motion, or you can just do a motion.
The change.
When you're done with, chapter 1, which that is the last line of, you can approve chapter 1 as modified.
we would, yeah,
And, but you're gonna approve the whole thing at the end anyway.
right, okay.
Yeah.
So we would make that, at that time, we direct you, as you're going through this, to make those formal changes.
I'm assuming that
I
if you're
know you
making
will.
changes, I will make them and I'll try to get them to you for the next meeting.
I
But
understand.
we really need to figure out what the story is, because if we're gonna get this on the ballot this year, we've gotta be done, meaning the Board of Selectmen has to be done by the mid to end of August.
August
That's 6
21st.
weeks, yeah, that's not too far from now.
So we have,
And then we have to have another public hearing,
yes,
and we have to vote it out, get it to them. They're gonna have to move pretty quickly, and they have to have a public hearing as well. And if they have any recommendations that they're not happy with, or there's things they're not happy with and wanna give you recommendations to look at again, you're gonna be in a very confined period. So I think you really should sit down with the first selectwoman, and give her a call. I'm happy to participate in that.
Right.
And say, if you want it done, everybody has to agree to a very aggressive schedule.
yes.
That's all I'm saying.
And I appreciate that, and we'll do that, and I guess, so here's the thing. I wanna make sure that we go through all of these changes that have been suggested before, and we can do that tonight, before we get to that next step. And I agree with you, that's what the next step is, and I'm all for being aggressive on this. But I wanna make sure that we don't just pass this by, that someone might say, oh, why didn't you consider these things? Because we have considered everything so far that the people have brought up at the public hearing. We've considered everything that was brought up in the editorial that was written by, in the day, including some of Mr. Sternberg's comments. And so we've been sensitive to all of this stuff, and I just don't wanna be criticized later on saying, why did you move this so fast and not, and skip this? Because if you do that, then it looks like we have a political agenda, and our agenda is good government, not just ramming this through, with all due respect, because I would love to.
I'm not advocating the expedition, I'm just saying that we need to know whether that's what we wanna do. Because
Okay, okay.
Yeah, that's all.
I mean, we might have to have a special meeting or something if we need more time or whatever, but
Yeah.
we're not, I mean, I'm not gonna push it through if we haven't looked at everything,
Right,
so.
all right, so,
I just wanted to make the point that something that I did not think was the case is in fact, with at least the first selectman, the case.
they would be happy to do it.
That's what
And-
she said.
And I would be happy to do it too.
Me too. I
Yeah.
mean, you know, if it's not gonna change anything except sitting around, I'd rather get it done.
Listen, You don't want to be stuck with me for another year. Okay. All right, moving on to items that's marked number 2, filling of vacancies on elected vacancies. So, looks like they want the Board of Selectmen to fill vacancies on Board of Finance and Board of Ed. So it should be consistent, I guess. That's the comment that's made.
Let's say that's not how I read that paragraph.
Go ahead.
That the way this is redlined, that they want the Board of Finance and the Board of Education to fill their own appointments that are vacant. However, if those boards do not, within 60 days, fill the appointment, then the Board of Selectmen are empowered to do so.
That's always been the case.
And that's the way it's been.
Right, and
Yeah.
that's, I think it's just,
Then we don't need to do anything on it then. I appreciate what you just said, David, because it tells, I know you've looked at it and I know you've analyzed it that way, and if that's what it says, that's fine.
yeah, I just think that this is more concrete of, you have X number of days to fill the appointment. If you choose not to do that,
Yeah.
then the Selectmen will take that role.
And we don't need to make any change.
Well,
So I think how they've redlined it is appropriate,
So,
So you're thinking a change is appropriate?
yes,
Okay, so there is a change. All right.
yes.
All right.
okay. All right, so then I think we should have a vote on that to make it read, to have Steve make it read that way.
I would move that section 2(4) subsection A as redlined be approved.
Well,
I don't
don't
understand
wanna
what
do
we're
that.
doing here. I don't understand what we're approving.
Well, you're.
So like what happens if, an elected, like the registrar, there is no board. So what happens then? I mean, they're just appointed in 60 days or, it's for elected officials, so I'm getting confused.
Well, the Board of Selectmen shall appoint any vacancy in any elected town office, which is what the
Except
registrars
the Board
are.
of Ed.
Right.
Except the
Board of
Board of
Finance.
Education. and
Okay, because
Finance.
I'm getting confused by the red line, because I don't understand what the part of the, that's the spreadsheet, but not, I don't know what the red line says.
So the first clause just deals with all offices, then you get into the exception, and the red lines all deal with the exceptions.
Yes,
Which is only Board of Ed and Board of Finance.
Correct.
correct.
I
So
mean,
it's basically
That's the
what
way
it
I
is
read
now.
it, yeah.
what they were doing is adding 60 days, which wasn't there for the Board of Ed and Board of Finance.
Yeah, it puts a time limit on their appointment, and then kicks it back. It was already in there, actually.
Yeah, no, that was in there, that was always been the
Yeah.
case.
Well, it wasn't for the boards, I mean, because they made an exception.
Well, no, we knew when we had to replace somebody, you know,
Right,
It
you
was
just did
60
it,
days.
you probably just filled it.
So,
we knew it was 60 days.
So the motion should be that the board, that if the Board of Finance, that section 2-4 should be changed to read that if, to the effect that if the Board of Finance does, or the Board of Education does not fill a vacancy on their board within 60 days, then the Board of Selectmen may,
They're empowered to fill that vacancy.
yes,
That
And
has
that's
always
what
been
this-
true.
and that's what
Yes,
this already
that's why I'm
says.
that's what it
confused.
already says.
Yeah.
So that's my point.
Yeah, so what, I
Yeah.
don't understand what we're doing here.
Yeah, so we're not doing anything.
I
So
think
what's all the red line?
That's where
Just
I'm
nonsense?
confused.
Okay. Because it says it was request from the town clerk. Who's here? Okay.
One of the things that I said was currently, if there's a vacancy in the Board of Finance and the Board of Ed.
Yeah.
And if there is a municipal election in between when that person is appointed to when the position that they're appointing expires, they have to run. So in the case when Dudley Wheeler passed away, they
Okay,
appointed somebody, I believe it was Blonde White,
yeah,
and Dudley's So say it was 2023,
Yeah,
okay?
I know where you're
and-
going.
And so Blunt couldn't finish Dudley's term to 2027.
Right.
Because in the meantime,
There
there
was
was
an
a
election.
municipal election.
Right.
So he had to run, he lost,
right,
and then it was whomever to finish the term. So now you have to have on the ballot in between to fill the vacancy.
And so this eliminates that.
And they did not intend to have it read that way, but that's how it was defined, and they weren't happy about it, but Cindy could do nothing about it. That's how it, they didn't mean for it to be that way. They wanted it to finish the term.
right. So in other words, the replacement finishes the term regardless of whether or not there's an interim municipal
Correct.
election.
And it makes sense.
That does make sense, and that, I'm
And
not
that's
getting
what I
that out of
had
this.
brought up. It's a ballot nightmare, and the
Yeah,
elections
no, it makes
division
total sense.
hates it and
Just
wants
to
us to get rid of it.
state
So
Right.
the revision.
But that 30, 60 and all that, that's already the way it is.
That's
Well,
the
the
way
thing
it
is, though,
is.
in the original charter, it doesn't say that vacancies on the Board of Education and Finance shall be filled by the remaining members of that board until the next municipal town election.
Well, that's the part we want to get rid of, the next.
And so we want to get rid of that and
Right.
make it the sixth, so that the boards of
And
finance
it's
and
not
education
worded
have
that
60
way.
No,
days.
It's kind
it
of
isn't.
read in between it's how it's what it, it's really how it's defined
Right.
here now, but that's
Yeah.
not the
But that's the
intent.
whole point of this whole
Correct.
red line,
Correct.
Yes.
which is not what any of this red line seems to suggest, right? So that we should vote on.
Okay, so make a motion, because I want to tell you
Okay.
something. You comprehend this better than I am right now.
I doubt that highly, but, okay, so I move that interim appointees are appointed for the duration of the term they are filling.
And that has to be done within 60 days. of
Right,
the
and it must be
vacancy.
done, whoever does the appointment, whether it's the
Got
Board
it.
of Selectmen or
Gotcha.
the whatever other boards.
Okay, so the motion is to make the change that, so it would provide that interim appointees would be appointed to the term,
Finish the term.
to finish the term,
The unexpired term.
finish the unexpired term of the vacancy that they are appointed to within 60 days.
Yeah, I mean, that was the change that they were after.
Yes?
The rest of it is
I'll play with this.
a lot of verbiage in here to say that.
Well, here's the question. Okay, we're saying within 60 days. Who has the authority? Is it the Board of Finance and Education, or is it the Board of Selectmen?
It's the Board of Finance and Education have
Right.
it within that 60 days, and then it goes to the Board of Selectmen, if we can't do it.
But our
Because
motion
sometimes we don't
hasn't, but this
agree.
motion hasn't said that the Board of
Well, no, I was
Finance-
just dealing with that one point,
Oh, okay.
one part of it,
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
because that's
Well, the
that's
change-
already in there. The Board of Selectmen shall be empowered for the it's the unexpired portion of the term is the important part
Right,
of
why
this.
don't we
It's
work
already there.
without the red part as it was, and
Yeah.
then do the change as modified.
Yeah.
And then the attorney will work on those changes. And that'll accomplish.
And I think it's the
What they're
full
looking
term. I
for.
think right now, on the Secretary of State, there is unexpired term and the full term, and I think that unexpired and full is the important word, so it may not necessarily be unexpired. It might be to finish the full term, but I'll have to look.
And one thing with the days, when they're talking about days, are they talking about every day, or are they talking about business days?
Well, that's one of the defined terms, that's one of the defined terms that I have for you. And generally, it's calendar days.
It'll be counted.
That's the general definition. If you want it to be business days, you can make it business days. So if you adopt the definition of days that I've recommended and take a look at it, and
Like the calendar days.
Calendar's
is the-
better.
calendar
because
days
it's
is
too
the,
long.
is the rule, and then business days, you could consider when you need to consider it, but any other time, days means calendar days, if you adopt that definition.
But it needs to be the unexpired portion of the term, because otherwise it becomes a
Right.
nightmare, so that's why they stuck it in there, so.
How do you
I'm
determine a
sticking to my-
vacancy?
What's that?
How do you determine a vacancy?
Well, you had a definition in there.
Well, I have a definition that I'm proposing, but I
I
don't
think
know.
that's how it's like death moves away, he
All right.
resigns.
And you don't have districts, because one of the questions I had, you have no
No,
districts,
no,
okay,
we're
so
at large.
that can come out of there, okay.
So I stick with the motion because the Board of Selectmen are already in there, so as the appointers, if that doesn't happen.
Okay, restate, can you restate the motion?
The bird just fell from the
I
roof
know,
there.
I know.
Well, let's see.
Just the
I'm-
just the concept of it, Lynn.
Yeah,
because
I
we'll
move to
make a
modify,
revision.
I move to modify section 2(4)A such that any appointees who fill an unexpired term will do so for the unexpired portion of the term.
You heard the motion? Is there a second?
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? So voted.
Apologize to interrupt. Do you want me to keep these very general for motions? I know the wording's gonna change, just general
Yes.
topics for what the motion is, and
Yes, so.
I don't wanna
If
over-understand
you-
what's
Derek,
happening here.
let me tell you, I think you did a great job on the last set of minutes that you did. And so when you do the minutes, we have a chance to review them, and if we have a change on
We'll
them,
fix it.
we'll make them. And I had one change that I thought, yeah, usually I don't, but this guy, to me, that was important.
Okay.
So, and we all review them, we're all pretty conscientious about that. Okay, the third item has been dealt with, the issue of term limits.
You're gonna leave it.
Yes.
Okay.
Item 3.5. There are two different recommendations relating to charging a dollar amount for what the town can approve. So I'm not sure what page you all have, but this, on my page is 5, but it's section 3.3, special town meetings.
Yeah, so we made a change, Board of Finance made a change whereupon I think we changed from $5,000 to $15,000 for things that didn't require bid waivers.
Yep.
To account for inflation. This would be in keeping with that because currently it's at $5,000. So what they want to do is sale or disposition of any town-owned real property, they want to move that to $15,000 from, I think it's 5 in the
Five.
original.
Only 5.
Yeah, it's
Or
fine.
here's the problem, I'll take a look at the statute, but remember I mentioned this to you?
Please.
There's a statute that came out of the city of Stamford, charter revision process a year ago, when the mayor put a rat into the legislation that has very strict rules about changing these things by charter. What we might do to get around that is you leave the threshold, but you permit a modification by ordinance. They say you can't change it by charter.
Oh,
But if the
okay.
charter has a provision, one of my other charters has a provision already. In Waterbury, they didn't have this problem. We couldn't change in the charter, and they wanted to, but they have the provision to do it by ordinance. I might suggest that you leave the current value, but allow for a modification by ordinance, because the statute doesn't prevent modifications by ordinance. And so this is your baseline, the 5,000 would remain a baseline,
Yep.
and then by ordinance you can change it.
Yeah, the next time they do a
Yeah.
ordinance, they could stick that in.
Do you get my drift, Mr. Chair?
I get your drift, I just.
It's bizarre.
Yeah, no.
Oh, no, it's a horrible piece of legislation.
Yeah, it's-
I'm not defending it. I think I tried to kill it. We had these sections out, but Stanford insisted on keeping them in. It was a very, very bad situation. We're still hoping to change it next year.
So that's fine, what's the,
I would say something to the effect of which amount may be modified by ordinance.
I agree with that.
then I'd entertain a motion to that effect.
Okay, and I would move that section 3.3 subsection 4 be changed to the town-owned personal property value exceeds $5,000 or as modified by ordinance.
Second.
Unless otherwise modified. I'll come with the language.
Motion has been made, and has been seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
All right,
Any opposed? Thank you. Number 4 is a grammar correction, section 4-2B.
By the other two.
It's four, what about 4.1? Or 4.1?
Yeah, 4-1 is 4 years from 2.
Yeah, but it's not, because
But
it's
no,
2 years,
Because we approved the selectmen being 4 and the first selectman 4.
and the others are 2,
So that has to be adjusted.
yeah.
yes, that's true.
I'm sorry, where,
So we're.
Section
Section
4.1
4.1.
currently has the board shall be elected every 2 years.
I
And
say,
we're gonna make the first elect person every 4 and the other 2 positions every 2.
and we've already voted on that.
We've already decided.
Yeah, but it doesn't say that, so.
But that has to be changed
Yeah,
Okay,
to indicate that.
all right.
What I'll do when I give you the draft is I will put a note on the side indicating that this is a modification, a recommendation of the Charter Commission. You don't have annotations in this charter, no? Okay.
no.
All
I'll call that 3.7.
right. Item 4 on the spreadsheet.
That's a grammatical thing, that's from by any 2 members to by the other 2 selectmen.
Was that what it's intending, or is it trying to say any one of them can do it?
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, I don't know how to read that. I think it means, I think it's trying to say any of them can do it in their red line.
So,
But even or by the other 2, it's unclear.
Yeah, by
Well,
any
the thing
2
is-
means you need to have 2.
Well, the original one says, or by any 2 selectmen, well, we
Right.
only have
But
2
they're
other
changed.
selectmen.
Yeah,
So
but
you
it
need to
sounds
have
like
2 of
both
them.
have to be
So it's the
agreement.
other 2
The other
is
2
perfectly
can do it.
legitimate.
If the first selectman doesn't want it and the other 2 do, they have a meeting.
Right, so changing that to the other 2 makes sense to me.
But that's what
I-
they're trying to say?
Yes.
Is it- and
So either-
it's 1 if it's the first selectman, and then it's both of them have to be in agreement
Right.
for the others.
And the other thing I noticed throughout the charter, when it's numbers, under a certain number, they're supposed to put the number in. Sometimes they put the number in, sometimes they don't put the number in.
I'll try to
Just
go
as
through and catch
As a
this.
consistent
Yeah,
thing.
I try to catch this as I go through.
all right. So we don't need to make any, we don't need to make any motion because it's just a grammatical error.
Yes.
Okay.
Well, they've deleted any, so it is actually a change.
Yeah, I'm working off a different.
This is it's a very squirrely,
Yeah, but it says
Red
by
line.
any of the 2, so it could have been one or the other. Now they have to both.
right, now it's gotta be both of them.
Yes. All right. Removing a first selectman, we don't deal with that. Number 6, 4-year term for first selectman, we've dealt with it. Number 7, we've dealt with it. Number 8, we've dealt with the constables.
Mhm.
Number 9, we have not, let's see, there is,
Oh, yeah,
which is section 6-4.
Well, under 6-2, can we go back to 6-2, because they've made some changes here.
Okay.
I know we did the 4-year term, however, we took out the town clerk, and then at the bottom, we're taking out B and C, so the treasurer will now be B, or C, no, it'll be B. That has to be changed.
Yeah, well, I'll fix that.
Okay, and then
Right.
we're taking the constables out.
Yes,
Okay.
yeah, so that's a drafting issue. Steve?
So you're
I just
taking
wanted
the
to be sure.
constables out completely?
yes.
Yes.
And you, Marcia, you said that in A, in section A, it's again the 4 and the 2 years? Because it says 4 for all of them.
Right, that has to be
Yeah, so that has
modified.
gotta be fixed.
Right,
Why do we need to repeat that?
You probably don't.
I'll look at that, 2 years for the other select. And so the first selectman's 4-year term will commence, if this goes to the ballot this year, after the 2025
Yeah.
election. So it'll be in effect for the 2025 election.
Yes.
That's the intent. If we don't do it this November, it would be in effect for the 2027 election.
Yes.
Depends on when we do it. If we do it, if we
That's
do
right.
it a special, when we do the referendum in April or whenever that's
Yeah.
done, then it still gets done for
Yeah.
2025. Okay. 6-4.
Hang on one sec.
Yep.
So, I could just imagine various town committees going bananas over this, but now the town officers, it's 8 constables, and they're deleting no more than 4 from a single party?
no, we would
Other
take them
deleting
out.
the
No, getting rid of the
We're
constables
deleting
completely.
the constables completely.
We are, yeah, but their change was to just get rid of the part from 4 from a single party. That's what my red line looks like, but mine's not in color.
Right.
Ah,
Well, they
Um,
wanted to make them split, I guess, 4 from each party.
Right, but we're getting rid of
We're
all of
getting
them,
rid
so
of
we need,
constables altogether.
don't we need a motion for that? That's where
We
I was
did
going.
last,
Oh,
last,
okay.
yeah, we did. All right, 6 dash, what did I say, 6-4?
Sure.
Okay.
Which is subsection B, the second sentence.
If the stagger, that was creating the stagger. If
Right.
the stagger's in place, you don't need to replace it.
Right,
Yeah.
so those
So
those
that language
lines
can
should be
go-
deleted.
Yeah.
Okay,
So, and those numbers will change then.
okay, so we don't need, the
B,
language is,
you
the
take
language
B
is,
out,
I'm sorry?
you're taking B out,
No, the language at the end of it.
the language. at the-
Referring to
Oh, the
November
red, oh, I-
99 and
yeah,
November
that's- okay,
2001.
And do we need E if the definitions define a quorum? Someplace else there was, in this thing, you know, if you had 5 boards, you need this for a quorum, that for a quorum.
It's a good point, quorum should be half of the membership plus 1.
It's a majority of the entire membership.
So why are
Yeah, didn't you
we
have it as
saying
a-
what it is?
That would be a defined term.
Yes,
Okay.
So we can get rid of that?
What
That
if you,
shows-
what if you only have 3 people and 2 would have to agree and say 1 isn't there, you only have 2 people and you don't,
and you don't have a quorum and you'd have to adjourn the meeting.
well, 2 would be a quorum.
Well, so long as they agree, otherwise it's
And if they don't agree,
failed
it's-
motion.
Yeah, the motion doesn't go through. Because we do have 3-member boards.
Okay, do we need a motion for that, other than to, 4 members of said board shall constitute a quorum? There needs to be a motion to,
Strike that?
yeah, I'm sorry, because I know I'm working from a different document than some of you are.
I'd like to have your document.
Cripe's sakes,
'Cause this is a
this is
mess.
why I'm so confused. But I think the changes have already been made in the document.
Yeah, that's true. That's
Yeah.
what they did.
Yeah,
They made the changes, yeah, that they want, yeah.
so we have to make a motion on that, that
Yeah, because they pose it as a question.
we have to make a motion that quorum be, that
We're
Charter.
gonna adopt the defined term,
the charter define
Yeah.
quorum as a simple majority.
well, it's a majority of the entire membership, is the way I usually define it,
Okay.
of the board or commission.
Okay, simple majority of the entire membership. Am I
I
right
use the
in
term
saying
majority, I
that?
don't use the word simple, but
Yeah.
we
Well,
could if you want.
That actually poses an interesting point. So in a meeting, when you have a 7-member board and 4 people show up, and the vote is 3-1, it fails, right?
No, passes.
Well, but,
because they have the ability to transact business.
yeah,
That's a
but,
different issue.
well, you need, okay, so that's okay.
That's a different
Even if
issue.
you only have the 4.
Even if you have the 4,
Okay.
because if you have the 4 to transact business,
Yeah.
then you could have a 3-to-1 vote.
Okay, so as
Then-
long as you got the 4, it doesn't matter what the vote is.
The issue you need to look at is what are they voting on? Do you want an ordinance, well, you can't do an ordinance by, it's a town meeting anyhow, but if you were doing something significant, the Board of Finance has to do a transfer, let's say,
Right.
and you were operating, it's a big deal, and you're operating with the minimal number of people that you just have your quorum,
Right,
do you want that to be a majority of those present voting, or is it a majority of the entire body?
well, that's what I'm asking. So-
That, yeah, that's different than quorum. Quorum
Yeah, but that
established-
begs the question
Yeah,
for that, so. the way
that's why I
we-
was saying there's a
yeah.
distinction, you have your quorum, the issue of what is enough to pass something is something you have to look at on each item as you go through it.
Yeah, but is that, what I'm trying to say is that difference, when you take quorum out of this thing, was it really trying to speak to that difference?
I don't think so. I mean,
So we don't think we need to add
I think
something
they
to
were
that?
looking for a definition for quorum for the entire borough boards and commissions.
Okay, so we don't need to specify anything further with respect to that vote, or, okay.
Yeah, you need to look at provisions, if you want to address that issue, you need to look at the specific voting provisions in the charter to determine whether it is something that's important enough to be a majority of the entire body, or 2/3 of the entire body, or a majority or 2/3 of those present and voting.
Well, like
You
in
see the
planning and
difference?
zoning, right, there were supermajority requirements for some things and so on.
Correct.
And so we did it one way on that, and then other boards I sit on, we do it differently, so that's why I wasn't sure if that's the point they
Yeah.
were trying to raise.
I was surprised they made it 4 to be the quorum and not maybe 5, like an odd number, but I guess.
Well, that's because it's a
Well, it's-
7-member board, it's just for Board of
It's
Ed.
the majority, whatever the majority works out
Is
to
it
be.
just one, so.
Yeah, it sets you
then it
up for a
becomes-
tie vote, yes,
Right,
I get it.
right. Yeah, okay.
You can transact business, but you may not transact business if you can't
Can't get the
pass
vote,
anything.
right.
Yeah,
So there needs to be a motion that within the charter, the term quorum shall be a defined term.
So
correct.
moved.
Motion-
Second,
And second, okay.
Motion's been made and seconded, all those in favor?
All right.
aye.
Any opposed? Okay. That also deals with number 10. Number 11.
One second, I just want to make sure that.
Yep.
Yeah, you don't have to define quorum in each of the bodies. In any tie vote, the board shall not adjourn until the meeting has been resolved. Wow. That's good, I've never seen that.
Battle Royale. Okay, number 11, which is dealing with section 6-6. And this,
Yeah, they've requested that there be 2 alternate members added.
The 652, did we discuss 65B? We're not going to need that in there, that, like. we
No,
took
'cause
that
again-
Again,
language out,
they
so that
created
was
a
fine.
stagger.
We don't have to say anything about that, right?
No.
Except for
Right.
that, okay.
so going to 6-6, they're looking for 3 members plus 2 alternates. The Board of Assessment, the Board of Appeals would consist of 3 members plus 2 alternates.
Yeah, 3 are elected and 2, the alternates are appointed by the Board of Selectmen.
Right, it's hard to get members.
So I'd entertain that motion that the Board of Assessment Appeals shall consist of 3 elected members and 2 appointed alternates.
Second, or, so moved.
Motion's been made
Second,
and seconded. Any further discussion?
I have just one point about this, when we talk about 3 members and then 3 alternates,
2 alternates.
2 alternates.
or 2 alternates. In most of the boards, it just says X number of members and then X number of alternates. Should we call the members the regular members and alternates alternate members?
No, because it's always member and
It's
alternate,
members and
one's
alternates.
elected in
Okay.
this case.
Yeah, The members are
Members are
elected, the
elected.
alternates are not gonna be elected,
But
is
I
that
mean,
correct?
appointed
Yes,
members
that's
of
correct.
boards and commissions, say like this one, we were not elected, but we have, say if we had some alternates, we'd have regular members and alternates. I'm
You just
wondering
call
if-
them alternate members.
You call them alternate members. The language here doesn't
Now,
disturb
now
me.
it says political party, does that mean people that aren't in a party? Does that make any difference?
No, you could be two unaffiliated, you just can't be two Democrats or two Republicans.
Yeah, but if you're not, what if you're not?
If you're unaffiliated, you're not a political party. So you could have two of those.
But it says they have to be from the same political party.
Not to
No,
be.
it
Not
says
to
they
be.
can't be,
I
Not
mean,
to,
not to be from the same, okay.
right. So you could have
So
one
the-
Dem, one Republican, or two
yeah,
unaffiliated.
if you were
or-
appointed
An
a
independent.
communist.
Two independent
Independent.
parties, yeah.
I mean, an
Two
independent
socialists.
is considered
What?
independent is not really a party.
It's not
Well,
a
yes, it
party.
is, there is an independent party now, which is
Is that
why
what they
they've
call
changed to
it?
unaffiliated,
All right,
if you're not part of any political organization.
okay.
Okay, any further discussion on that issue? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, thank you. Next, number 12, that's an issue of, we voted on this, and the issue of what we term the hired, the hired town clerk versus appointed. That's gonna be something that we already voted on, it's for drafting.
What section are you on there?
There's no section.
Number 12,
Oh, you're going off the spreadsheet?
I'm going off the spreadsheet.
Okay,
Those
you
are
already
gonna
dealt
be
with that.
Defined, one other term I found in there was nominated. Somewhere in the charter, can't remember, but it said a nominated person, that definition. I don't know.
This seems to be, I don't know what this goes to, it's generic. They think it's in a few spots, so we should probably take a look at how the word appointed and hired are used.
Oh, well, that was, yeah, we had that discussion, Black's legal dictionary and all that stuff. You said that the statutes use the word appointed, right?
That they go through a hiring process.
But it's a
not-
hired, but it's
Yeah.
hiring.
Yeah, I
Yeah, you have to
mean,
go through a panel, depending on the position, it's,
Maybe we just need to define appointed
right.
and just say that it's, it's hired like any other town employee. But somebody brought to my attention that there's something in the statutes vis-à-vis, Bill, are you here? You
Yes.
Still here? Why don't you tell us? what you-
Okay, well, by statute, a town clerk can only be removed by the Attorney General, whether it's appointed or an elected position. So that's why you have to be careful about appointed versus hired.
That was one, but you also were
And then
saying
there's a-
something, yeah.
Well, then there's a second statute that says the default method for compensating a town clerk is by the fees that are collected. But a town can, by ordinance, establish a fixed salary
Right.
for a town clerk.
They did that years ago, most
Right, but-
everybody, right.
But the point here is, and the reason I focus on the word appointed rather than hired, whether you go through an interviewing process or whatever process you go through, you have the town clerk and the tax collector are public officers. So right now they're elected. If we go to a mechanism where the Board of Finance appoints them, they're still public officers. They're not the same as a civil servant.
Well, we wouldn't appoint them. They would be hired.
But when you start talking about hiring, there's a subtlety here. They're not like rank and file employees, right? Because they have statute, particularly for the town clerk, establishes responsibilities and authorities that are supposed to be exercised independent
Right,
of,
but I'll address that in my position as assessor.
Right.
Assessors were elected or appointed, and then all of us went in to be appointed because you needed background to go in and do the position. So it's the same thing as the town clerk and the tax collector. What they're just doing is saying, okay, now you're gonna move in, you're gonna be appointed based upon your background, based upon your knowledge of your office. So if I can, if they have just cause, they can fire me and I imagine the town clerk, because it's public records, that's probably why you have to go through the Secretary of State's office.
We work for the state, we're governed by statute.
Well, we
Right,
are
so
too.
We don't
I
make
mean,
policies.
But if, particularly in, you guys need to be very aware of some of the statutes for these positions,
Right.
particularly this removal statute. Because
Right,
I mean, I think that even if you're appointing somebody to the position of town clerk, it should be for a set term, just like an appointment that's made to a board or commission.
Why though? We didn't do that with the assessor.
no, I mean,
Well-
it says in the statute when they
But if
change.
you can't remove, if you appoint somebody and then there's no way to remove them except to go through the Attorney General
Well,
for,
just,
for
that's just,
specific causes.
Do you have a citation on
I
that
didn't think
statute?
I could be removed.
Do you have a
Um,
cite on that statute?
I can-
Because there's I'll look at that, but there's a whole series of
Right.
what they call the town statutes, the default statutes that apply if you don't have a charter. If you have a charter, you can pretty much set your own rules. I know there are some,
I don't think that it said anything, don't think it had the language of, that, provided for an exception, but let me just,
well, those are like just,
no, but I'm
just
saying that those
laws, right?
statutes may not apply to a town that has a charter, that's what I'm asking.
right, I know,
If
I
you give me that
understand
site,
the
that'd be great.
question.
I mean, I'll look it up, but it's,
But all those are usually just cause. I mean, if you have someone, even
well,
if they-
employees, there's Laudermill, there's federal, there's standards for terminating people that are not, you're not in a union, you're administrative, the assessor is the assessor in the charter now? It was out, it was-
yes, it became a
Yeah,
department.
the
head,
department, the
so-
Board of
and
Finance.
then the director. So the position is not in the union.
So they're not
So the
at
Board
will?
of Finance, okay,
No, my position was, I was appointed initially every 4 years. And then after they changed the law, I was an appointment, and then for just cause, the Board of Finance could, I mean, I'm hired through the Board of Finance, which makes sense.
It's Connecticut General Statute, 7-22.
7 dash what?
22.
7-22.
Okay,
And what does that say?
It says removal of town clerks. And it says whenever complaint in writing is made to the Attorney General, blah, 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 blah. And it specifies a whole process of the Attorney General, there's due process stuff in here.
Right.
So,
are we planning on, since we're limiting the elected town clerk and tax collector, are we going to be putting them into chapter 8 as appointed
Well,
officials?
that's one of the things I think I need clarified, because they changed some of the titles when they put things in there, because some of the people were managers, like solid waste and some of the other categories in building. But those are union positions. And in order to put them in as a director, or they want I don't know why department heads, because it's hard to say, usually they say I want the director of administrative services, or the director of public works, or so on. Now, if we go to head, I don't know what that accomplishes, but the union would have to agree to take out solid waste and building if they make them a department head. So I don't know, and the town clerk, same
Well,
with
you can have a
town clerk.
department head that's a member of the union, different communities have,
No, but the union had to agree to take them out.
and they have.
They did with my position. I don't know whether they would do it, that still has to go through a process.
So I don't know anything about that, but I think you have to, and there is a note here that if the commission decides to recommend hiring or appointing town clerk and tax collector, those departments would need to be added here. And who would the appointing authority be for those positions?
Well,
Why is the Board of Finance appointing department heads?
no, the
We're
board,
just
the
the
assessor,
assessor.
they appointed the assessor.
Just the assessor.
Yeah. Under the Department of Finance, part of their responsibility was collect taxes, license fees, and sewer assessments, which is where the tax collector comes. So I'm not sure where they were recommending to put them, or the town clerk.
You may want to have these people, somebody in here to talk about these. Whether it's the first line, who made these recommendations?
the Board of Selectmen.
Board of
Yeah.
Selectmen, yeah.
So, yeah, because if the assessor comes to us and we're taking away the elected officials, comes to us being the Board of Finance, the tax collector should too, under the same theory.
Well, the tax
town
collector
clerk-
could be under the finance department.
Yeah,
Um,
and the town clerk under the Board of,
Selectmen.
the usual process we follow to hire.
You don't need to have somebody call a tax collector, you can have somebody who assumes the responsibilities of tax collection. So,
I mean,
whether,
wherever they want to put them, I mean, they're, the collector and the town clerk they're not union either, so it's not a,
But are they not because they were elected?
yes,
Okay. So now that's gonna become
they
an
could
issue
change,
too.
they could change.
Yeah.
right. I mean, some are, I don't, what are other charters? There's a lot of tax collectors and a lot of town clerks that are in the charter. Where do they fall?
They're all over the place. I mean, most of them are elected. Hartford has a town clerk that's appointed by the legislative body altogether. So the town clerk works for the city council in Hartford, not an independent elected official, not appointed by the mayor, but actually appointed by the clerk. I'd have to do some more research to figure out
I
how.
can give you the ones, I did get copies of the tax collectors and the town clerks. I'll give you these.
Oh, that's
These are
wonderful.
from the OPM sites.
But it doesn't tell you whether they're appointed.
Yes, it does. It does.
Oh, here they are, okay. I'll take a look at the status.
What's the date on that motion? The year?
It's
real-
2024.
I have
I just
2023 one.
I just pulled them off.
So again, it's an issue of, it's an issue of drafting,
Where to put them?
right, where to put them. And it's something that, although we've taken action on at the last meeting, it's a question of where it gets put. And so when we go through the draft, that's when we'll have the opportunity to comment on it, I think.
I think we would need to pull in the selectmen to find out what their thoughts are, where they think it should be. I'd also like to know their reasoning on the building department being a separate administrative department.
I'm sorry, what are you talking about?
The building department, they want as a separate administrative department as opposed to being under something else.
These were all under the Department of Public Works initially, both of them.
Right, well, the funny part about it is, the state of Connecticut, the state building department used to be under the Department of Public Safety. Before that, it was Administrative Services. Now it's back to Administrative Services. So, I mean, the building department has been pushed around from department to department at the state level. I don't know why building can't be under Administrative Services. But I'd just like to know what their reasoning is for having the building being a separate department.
To get it out from Public Works, I would assume, because that was a problem initially. Initially, I believe, they
I
were
just-
under the selectmen. The selectmen were, I think, dealing with the building department. At one time, we had a building department in the planner. They
Mhm.
were, they kind of split that off to the planning department and the building department.
There's a new statute that just was adopted, law that was adopted by the General Assembly this year that permits municipalities to pool their resources and allow the COGS to do assessment, tax assessment, and tax collection. So there may be a trend to move these out of local government because it's hard to find assessors. Communities are having a real difficult time finding assessors. What's
Or
that?
we know.
Is that a problem here?
No, we got very lucky, but Marcia quit on us, so we had
I
to
quit.
scramble and find somebody.
She was fed
That
up.
was like 7 days a week.
Yeah, yeah, so that tends to be a trend. But, and we're not, and I won't get into this, but what I've also been trying to do is de-densify charters to not have your structure of your bureaucracy in the charter,
Yeah, exactly.
to allow that to be done by ordinance or by budget. set up your constitutional structure, so you shall have this, you shall have that, this is who appoints that, this is who hires that, or whatever term you wanna use, as opposed to the issue that you're just raising, why are we moving it from one department to another? That shouldn't be a charter question as much as it should be a budget question or an ordinance question in terms of how you wanna organize your government, but we don't have time for that, obviously, in this process, I get that. So, I just wanted to let you know, that is something that's available, but it's certainly not right now.
Moving
So-
on. Go ahead. I was gonna move to number 13 on this spreadsheet. And it's dealing with section 7.7, Inland Wetlands Commission. And although it says inland wetlands was 7, apparently that was changed by ordinance to 5.
You're,
They did it by ordinance?
That's what I understand from these comments. So,
All right, so you want to conform, you want to reverse engineer your charter to make the ordinance legal? Okay, there you go.
it's all right.
That's, I mean, it's disconcerting,
No, I understand, I know.
You get my point?
I get your point. No,
Yeah.
it's,
That's fine,
change it to
you
conform.
might as well conform and clean it up.
That's fine. Number 14.
7-14. They want to add 2 alternates?
Yes.
And I assume the statute allows for all those, for alternates as well, right? We can assume that, or,
I think the answer to your question is yes.
The statute dealing with shellfish commissions?
well, sometimes they provide for alternates in a law, and sometimes they don't.
Well, again, it depends on the law. There's a whole series of statutes, I was trying to say this a moment ago, that I call the town default statutes. And those are the statutes, like if you live in Essex and you don't have a charter,
they've given you one, sort of.
the statutes have provisions, so you have to appoint a police commission the way the statute says it, or a shellfish commission the way the statute says it. In a town with a charter, you have flexibility to create the entities the way you want to create them. I've run into this when we've tried to revise library boards, and the library people come to you and say, well, Title 10 says, well, that's fine, but we have a charter. So we can, and police commissions, I had this with a police commission in one of my communities. Yeah, that's what the charter says, if you don't have a charter. That's what the statutes say if you don't have a charter. Statutes are not clear, but that's the way they're interpreted. So you can do this.
So I'd entertain a motion that section 7-14 be changed to read that the Shellfish Commission shall be consisted of 5 members and 2 alternates.
So moved.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Very good. Moving right along to number 15, we've done that already at the last meeting.
Yes.
Number 16, the Ethics Commission. They're dealing with Ethics Commission now. It's nothing that we need to change.
Well,
No, they
but
do.
No,
we
they
want
do.
to take out ordinance, don't we, as seated as required per town ordinance? Isn't
No,
this-
that's what they want to put in there, because everybody goes to them and says, how come we don't have a seated ethics commission that does nothing? Right, they only have to constitute it in the case of a,
Of a
complaint.
Oh, the complaint, okay.
But I don't understand what it means seated is required per town ordinance.
So we have an ordinance, an ethics ordinance,
Yeah,
and what it says is that if a complaint is brought and is forwarded to be reviewed by the ethics commission from the town attorneys, we have to seat it. Okay, this makes it sound as if it's gotta be seated all the time, whether there's a complaint, an active complaint or not. So
So-
what they wanna do is clarify and say it will only be seated as required by the town ordinance, which is if and when there is a complaint. So they're
So-
seating, it's not a,
it's not a permanent board?
correct, it's
There's no
not a sitting
term?
board.
No,
We've
it's
never
not.
It's
had
just
one
like a
except
panel,
now.
it's like a panel,
Exactly.
That it's convened to
It's
deal
almost like
with
an
the-
ad hoc committee.
Well, it's just, it deals with one issue, right? So, or one complaint,
They're appointed to deal with the specific complaint.
complaint,
Yeah.
right?
so why do you have a commission of ethics, code of ethics commission?
case.
That's just what they called it in the ordinance,
Right.
but it gets constituted upon an actual, forwarded complaint.
Should they say there shall be an ad hoc code of ethics commission with
Yeah,
five
you may want to,
members?
because that's very, I've never seen anything like that, that's kind of unusual.
Yeah, we actually have an ordinance, and
I'll take
the
a-
ordinance is,
Let me
it
look at
says
the-
you'll seat it, you have something to adjudicate, but
So you don't have a code of ethics?
we do have a code of
By
ethics, and
ordinance?
it's part of the ordinance, yeah. So what the selectmen are dealing with on this is that, certain residents continuously complain that we don't have a sitting board, ethics commission. But you wouldn't, because since that ordinance went into effect, we've never had a complaint, it's like 30 years. So,
Oh,
right, so we do it, the ordinance says
who
we do it
appoints
as we need.
the panel? Or
The
whatever?
Board of Selectmen.
Board of Selectmen.
Right. I'll take a look at the ordinance and
Yeah.
see if I can come up with recommended language so that the charter is at least clear.
Yeah,
Because the charter implies that you have a seated,
correct, and that's why
Permanent
people
commission.
are constantly waving it in their
yeah,
face.
and I don't think that the recommended language gets you where you want to go.
Okay.
All right. let me look.
So do we wish to change 7-16 so that the import of that particular section is that the Ethics Commission would be seated on an ad hoc basis?
I think it has to comport with what the ordinance says.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's just the language.
So, okay, so so then the.
I'll take a look at the ordinance.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, the ordinance is very clear, it's very specific, but it conforms
So to
with
have the
this.
language comport with the ordinance, but I don't want to say that.
Right.
Because the charter shouldn't be comporting with an ordinance, an
Right,
ordinance should be
right, right.
comporting with the charter.
Right.
So what I want to see is how to reverse engineer the language that the Board of Selectmen, and we may take it out of here because it's not a commission. And we may move it to the powers of the Board of Selectmen to appoint a panel to address ethics issues as they arise under our code of ordinances or something like that. You see my point?
Yes.
Yeah.
The only thing is, I would just be, I think we need to be careful how we do that, because I think that,
Get people up in
There-
arms.
yeah, people.
Well, no, yeah, no, I.
But it's what happens now anyway, I mean, they will look at it as, political and this and that and everything else. But there's language in the ordinance.
Let me look, because
Maybe we just copy it.
Right,
I'm driving with blindfolds on
yeah,
right now.
no,
so
I understand.
I want to look at the ordinance.
I understand,
Yeah.
so that's fine, we just wanna,
Let me look at that and I'll come up with
We
some
wanna
thoughts
conform,
on it.
make the two
Yeah.
consistent.
All right.
All right, number 19, change the Commission on Aging from 12 to 7 with 3 alternates. Any?
Well,
That's essentially-
currently, there are 10 members on this commission.
So how are you gonna deal with that?
No, there's 12,
Oh, because I'm looking at it on the town website right now, and it's only got 10
because they
listed.
can never get 12 people, that's the point.
Okay,
So how are you gonna get rid of
3.
3 members?
So
Or
we're gonna
ask
change
them-
it
or
to
ask them
7
to become
members and 3
alternates.
alternates.
Well, but you can't take, do they have a term? You can't eliminate somebody's term. If they're in there for a term of office, the 7 would have to take effect when you get down to the 7 is what it comes down to.
Yeah, I don't know how many are in there now.
Yeah,
I don't know, or whether they're alternates, so I assume they're all, full members, since they can't fill the thing.
yeah, but so when you're reducing a board or commission, then it also has to comply with minority
With-
party representation
Right,
and all that, so you need to,
fill all that out.
so I mean, what we'd have to do to make that work is I'd have to see what the terms are of the current members and see how that comports with the minority party rep standard to make sure that when you get down to the 7, that you are not violating minority party representation.
With what's in there, you mean?
Yeah, I mean, if you're reducing it down to 7, we have to see in real terms what the current terms look like.
Okay, so.
Who would I talk to about that?
You're
Talk
gonna-
for selectmen's
You'll
office?
have to, yeah, because they're the only ones who are gonna know the parties.
All right. Okay. You ready?
Number 18, I just don't understand this, changing from director to department heads, so So I'm not understanding, I don't know what that's about. Section 23 and 24.
I think what that's about, again, we're gonna have to clarify this with the selectmen, but I think it has to do with planning and zoning. Um, uh,
It was Public Works. They
What,
were,
I'm
they
sorry,
were
what
on-
section is that?
8-1 on 5, 6, 7, 8.
It's 8-1.
Administrative departments, page 20, around 23.
Okay, yeah, I got it.
So administrative services, finance, planning, public works, and human resources, services rather, shall each have a department head as opposed to a director.
Yeah, so one thing that's happened here, though, is they have told us what they want to do with the town clerk and the tax collector in their comments.
Yeah, I saw that.
Administrative services, finance, planning, public works, and human services. Assessments for director.
I would be interested in knowing how they're defining director versus department head. Because the way I read, a director is responsible for an organization that has many different functions, as opposed to a department head heading up a department that only is responsible for a narrowly defined set of responsibilities. So
Yeah.
I'd be interested in how they're defining those two terms as to whether we would want to move forward with this.
Because I have a definition of department. I did not do department head because I didn't see that in the charter, except for these changes, as any major functional or administrative division of the town. You also have reference to offices and agencies, and so I'd want to clean that up as well. But your point's well taken. But every towns have different titles. And then you have to look at your budget, you're on the Board of Finance, I assume that they have things that are called departments.
Well, yeah, so like, if, Department of Public Works, you know, we have engineering and we have, you know, the highway department,
But
right?
that's a division of the Department of Public Works.
Well, but that would be the department versus the director, right,
Correct.
the department head. And we just do it all under one sort of section by director, but, Marcia, wasn't there a ton of history as to why directors and that personnel, you know, kind of chart got put in here way back when?
Yeah, well,
Something around the Spellman years, somebody was telling me about this, but,
Mr. Spellman, he put in the unions and such when he was leaving, because he didn't want people to just be let go, you know, because of election changed, because that's what would happen, they wipe out all the employees.
okay.
Now, what happened with the directors was, and one of the reasons I was a director, is that one of the selectmen at a time didn't want, they only wanted the directors to go to the meetings, so you were excluded.
Right.
And it was very difficult to work under conditions when you have to know what's going on in some of the other departments. You had to literally go to those departments to find out. And in the Department of Assessment, we're dealing with a lot of the departments. You're dealing with the building, the planning, the town clerk, you know, we're really interacting with a lot of departments. So this put that position there, plus you're overseeing the revaluation, which is another set of people and contracts and things. So that was finally agreed upon through the Board of Finance, to take it out from the finance director and put it under as a department separate.
So it was for consistency of government.
Right, and then solid waste and building were under public works. And that, you know, whether it got larger because it was engineering and public works, and then those departments were kind of acting, the building department and solid waste were kind of acting on their own separately, but
Right.
yet they still were under control of that director. So they then went under the selectmen. So I'm not sure where they want to go with that.
But is that really relevant, I mean, at this point, for the consistency of government aspect about what you call somebody, because you can't just fire them? You know, without, you can't, I mean, like, it's not like a new administration can come in and say, oh, you're all gone. You know,
Not in those positions, but
well, I mean, they're in the charter to protect from that happening, but as a practical matter, can that really happen? Seems to me it's pretty damn hard to fire anybody, even for cause.
So, who made this suggestion? Was it,
Well, the Board of Selectmen did.
so, you know something, I think we're gonna have to conference some of these things with the Board of Selectmen.
You should probably invite them to the next meeting if you
Yeah, I would like them here.
Yeah,
I mean, some of the titles too, that means you've gotta notify everybody, you've gotta change
Right.
your business cards, you've gotta change, you know, and I don't know what, there's any really difference between the titles. I don't know what they were trying to get at.
yeah, I think you need to do a little more digging with them on all these issues.
So, okay, that's fine, we can make that our, part of our next meeting to, have them here so we can have we can have some
And since if you have them, we could also talk about scheduling.
timing.
Yes.
Which is fine, I think that's,
Yeah, because
I think
they
that's a
need to
great-
know that they're gonna have a lot of special meetings themselves and there'll
Yep.
be 2 public hearings.
I
so-
think that's a great,
Yeah,
great
from-
idea.
and from my perspective, let me just make this clear, Chair, that you wanna get it done, I will get it done for you. I'm just telling you, it's
Okay.
really difficult.
I
That's all.
appreciate that,
Yeah.
yeah, I know.
Not, and not difficult for me, it's just, it's a lot of socialization that goes on with charter revisions.
Right, and so the a conference with the.
Would be a
with
good
the-
thing.
The selectmen is, would be
Very
the next step. Yeah, it would be helpful in
Good.
doing that. Okay, moving on to number 19, community development, section 8-2.
So, no longer exists.
Uh,
Aye.
A.
boy.
I think all of these director heads, all this administrative stuff needs Patty Burnwell and the Board of Selectmen to explain the rationale behind this, because I don't understand it.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of awkward too to say, I want to see the head of the, you know, usually you say director, whoever it was, and it's kind of smooth, you know, but I don't know.
You're used to it. Yeah.
Get used to it, I guess.
Different communities have different, and that's why the whole debate about select board. I remember when New Haven changed their Board of Aldermen to the Board of Alders, and I was an alderman for 10 years. I said, oh, geez, that was such a distinguished title. You know, Board of Alders just rolls off everybody's tongue. It's been there for 20 years, so everybody gets it, and it just works. That, you know, I'm not recommending you make these changes, but I'm just saying that
Yeah.
title changes, you get used to them after a while. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, I think this is trying to make things,
Yeah.
when you bounce forward, you'll start to see specific departments and whatnot. And I think they're trying to make the charter conform to the way things are actually done.
Well,
Right.
one of the things I will think about for the next meeting is I have provisions that I put in charters that permit consolidation of departments, so long as the functions are being met. You can consolidate functions by ordinance or by budget, so that the charter may look different than and then the town attorney has to render a ruling that the function that is mandated in the charter is being met by ordinance. Then you fix it next time you do a charter revision. So there's ways to do that, so you don't have to wait 10 years or how many years it takes you to do a charter revision. So
So I think that we.
you should have that.
Yeah, I think that what we've done is we've finished our business for tonight, and we should plan for our next meeting to be a conference with the select board.
Um,
You guys are efficient.
If there's a hope of meeting November, can we afford to wait 2 weeks for that meeting, or should we maybe have a special meeting?
I'll talk, Steve, what do you think, what's your availability?
Next week's a tough week because of the
I
4th
know,
of July.
the 4th of
Yeah.
July.
Oh, right.
Which is Thursday, so I'm. You're probably not gonna have time to do a Monday meeting, I'm clear on Monday if we need to, I'm not clear on Tuesday.
Because it is a matter of days.
I could do Wednesday evening, but that's the night before the 4th of July,
Yeah, I
you know.
can't do
Keep
that.
it on we'll keep it on the 11th. I mean, not the 11th, unless they wanna do it on Monday?
I mean, it just saves us 4 days and, you know,
Doesn't save
does
us
whatever,
much,
but I
yeah.
mean, the timing is tight, looking at that schedule they gave us.
What I'll do is, knowing that we're meeting on the 11th, I will lay out a proposed agenda or a calendar to get through July 11th to the end of August. Because the most important thing they have to do after, and it may not, and I would also recommend, frankly, that from the point that they decide they want to do that, if they want to do that, that they come to every one of your meetings,
Yes.
and that we have, what shall I call, a mediative session, so that what we are gonna produce is something that they will accept.
Right.
So that you can eliminate the last step
Back
of bringing
and
it back to you.
Right.
So that's what I'd recommend, that we
Agreed.
do, that everybody work together. If they wanna get it done, they should work together before we have to report it out. Once we report it out, it's a point of no return. You can't bring it back to the commission. Once it goes out, you're stuck and you're gonna be in that cycle. So my recommendation is, they wanna do it after the 11th of July, they better be committed to coming to meetings. You may have to have a few special meetings.
And joint
so that-
meetings.
Yeah, and have, yeah, technically, they'll be your guests during your.
Or we
your-
are at
yeah.
theirs or something.
Yeah, but the point is, once it goes back to them, we want them to accept our report as a final report
Yes.
and not come back with recommendations, which they have the option to do. So that's what we have to be very mindful of. And I'll go through that at our next meeting. And I will have a draft on all the things I think we did tonight. I'll integrate a couple of the definitions that we talked about. Are you okay if I integrate the public notice? But please look at them and make sure they
I
work
looked
for you.
at 'em.
And I'll run them by the town attorney as well, to make sure he's okay with them. And I'll clean up and take some of the boards out that I left from other towns. to make sure
The alderman?
the alderman, you have no alderman here. But, there you go.
I
Excellent.
appreciate that, it's good.
Good job.
Okay. You wanna say anything?
That's not on the agenda.
That's all right, I'm giving you the opportunity, you're here.
Yep.
Okay, then I entertain a motion to
Motion to
adjourn.
adjourn.
Motion's been made, seconded, all those, you have anything? No?
So, no, I'm sorry.
No, okay,
I'm happy.
yeah, happy, good, then, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed, thank you so much.
Thank you.